down, he took out his camera, walked to the edge of the balcony, and snapped a photo. And one person near me was joking, saying that maybe the new CIA chief is spying. Wolf?
And we see more VIPs arriving right now. I think that's Bob Mueller, the FBI director at the bottom of the screen with his wife, Bob Mueller, the FBI, long-serving FBI director. We saw the acting CIA director, Michael Morrell, walking in, and the incoming, assuming he's confirmed, CIA director, John Brennan, also coming in. We're watching what's going on this year. You can also be part of CNN's coverage of this presidential inauguration. Let's bring in Brooke Baldwin to explain how that can happen. Explain away, Brooke.
Wolf, everybody hold up your phones. This crowd has phones. This is the first time we've had a presidential inauguration with Instagram. This is the most socially connected political event ever because of these. And so we here at CNN are asking you, because this is about you. This is about the community. We want you to take a picture of yourself watching inauguration, watching the swearing in on Capitol Hill today. We want you to upload it to Instagram because this is about you sharing your view of history with us. Go to Instagram. Here's the key. You need to hashtag CNN. Make sure you include a caption. Why is this important for you to be watching this historic occasion here on this Monday in Washington? We've already gotten a couple of photos. Let me share just a few with you. You might recognize this first guy, country music legend Willie Nelson, actually watching our coverage last night of the red, white, and blue ball honoring our nation's men and women in uniform. One more, very early this morning, we have a beautiful, beautiful sunrise picture from a college student from Kentucky, drove all the way in. This is Jaden Botsford's photo bright and early at 4 this morning. We asked him why he wanted to be here this early. He said he wanted to document history. One more photo. I don't know if you recognize her shoulder. Guess who this is? Beyonce. Beyonce is singing the national anthem. This is her practicing early this morning, again with the hashtag CNN. But I have to share my favorite with you. This 5.5-year-old little boy from Phoenix, Arizona. His mother snapped this photo, if you see, he's holding up his right hand because he was watching the president yesterday on CNN during the private ceremony, the swearing in. And apparently his mom, Elisa, said, honey, why are you holding up your right hand? And he said, Mom, because the president looks like me. Thanks to all of you who've been sending in pictures. We want so many more. This is a huge historic moment in Washington today. Go to Instagram, hashtag CNN. We want your history, your view of history shared with us and all around the world. Anderson, are you Instagramming?
I am, actually. Thanks very much.
There we go.
We'll be doing that all throughout the day. Around 1 million people may be here for today's inauguration. The weather is cold, but it is very sunny. It is a beautiful day. We're going to be able to show you what it looks like actually from space, weather permitting. CNN's John King is at the Magic Wall. How are we going to do that, John?
Well, Anderson, we've watched as we've been sitting here. The crowd is filling in. Perhaps not as big as last time, 1.8 million people, but the crowd is filling in. It's getting a pretty impressive crowd, and we'll be able to tell by the end of the day, thanks to technology up there, not Instagram, but satellite images, just what? Let's take a look at 2009. If you look at the picture here, let's start here. Here's the United States Capitol. Then it flows out. Watch me come along the mall. We are right about here. This is where our booth is this year. You see the Washington Monument. You see the World War II Memorial. You see the Lincoln Memorial. In 2009, I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. You see the Capitol right there. Those are people filling in the seats there. You see these dots down in here. These are all people in 2009 as the crowd went in. You see it's a massive crowd. Here's the Washington Monument here. You see the people all around. Here's another way to look at it. Let me come back in time and bring it over this way. Let me shrink it down and make this come in for me here. And you bring it in here. Here's 2009. I'm going to pop out the Capitol just to show you. On a normal day, this is an image from 2011, a satellite flying overhead. That's what the Capitol grounds would look like. You see the grass. You don't see any people, right? Well, look at this. This is, again, the inaugural from 2009. This we expect to look just about the same when we get satellite images later today. The VIPs, the people in the front section. The big question then is what happens out here in the rest. So you come down here as far as the Washington Monument right here. Again, look at these crowds. This is 2009, the Obama first inaugural. Here's a normal day in 2011. You see the big difference right here. Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich is arriving up at the Capitol, I'm told, as we continue to go through this. You see this play out. One more thing I want to show you as you come back in here. We can also look later over at the White House, where the president lives, of course. And what's the difference? Here's the president's reviewing stand. You see this little white structure here. There's also the VIP reviewing stand, some media reviewing over here across in the White House. That's not there. on a normal day when you take a look at the White House. So we'll be able to take a look later today, compare it to the 2009 photos, compare it to a normal day, and then you can use gridding technology and the like to try to get a sense, Anderson, of how many people. 1.8 million, they said, in 2009. We expect about half that today. But it's getting pretty impressive, as we can see here. We've got a feisty group, and we'll see. By the end of the night, we should have a better number.
It is. They are pouring in really by the thousands every few minutes. Paul Ryan, I'm told, just arrived. Also at the Capitol, as we anticipate the first family arriving soon as well. There you see Paul Ryan among the dignitaries to arrive. We are going to be, events are going to be starting to occur very quickly from here on in as we get to see more and more of the power players in Washington arriving. We're standing by for the president's arrival at the Capitol on this historic day. Stand by for that. A whole lot more for former Secretary of State Colin Powell. He's a Republican, an Obama supporter, and he's very candid about his concerns for his party's future. We're going to talk to him. That and more after our final commercial break. This is the final commercial break, and the president is coming out of the White House, actually. So before we go to commercial break, let's take a look. There's the president's mother-in-law. So, Gloria, they'll be making their way here to the Capitol as the president's aides get ready to get in the various cars. Jessica, what part of the White House is this?
I think we're looking right now at the north portico, it looks to me, and the president has been attending a coffee with congressional leaders, with Senate Leader Mitch McConnell, Speaker Boehner, and Congressman Eric Cantor. I confirmed that with each of their offices. A nice bipartisan tradition and a good way to kick off a new term. As we've been discussing, the president doesn't do enough outreach, doesn't do enough socializing with leaders. Well, here he is doing just that, and he's been with the wives. Vice President Biden and his wife has been there, as has the First Lady. They will then head in the motorcade and make their way up here to the Capitol, where they will go into a hold for about an hour before the president speaks.
Senator John Kerry arriving at the Capitol. There you see Senator Kerry.
Soon to have his confirmation hearings for Secretary of State.
This is the entrance that you see usually in the wide shots of the White House and our beauty shots, not the backside with the rounded edge, but the flat, wide front of the White House.
There you see Senator Kerry on the right.
One of the big differences when you have a change of power, you know, the current president greets the new president, and one of the traditions is he leaves a note. So that doesn't happen this time. The President Obama doesn't need to leave himself a note about the second term. And an outgoing vice president, there's a great old desk in the vice president's ceremonial office in the old executive office building where they sign their name. So there are some traditions when you have the transfer of power on a day like this where it's continuity. I think, as Jessica says, the president, that's a generous stroke to try to start with a little bit of a reset and say, maybe we can start and get along at least a little better.
And it's interesting that, of course, Mitch McConnell was there, who famously made the statement.
Senator John McCain also there.
Senator
Feinstein, I believe, behind him.
And Mitch McConnell was the one who famously said, we need to make this a one-term president. And there he is there at coffee this morning.
He has since said that was a political effort, and once that didn't come to pass, he's completely reconciled to the fact that he has to work with him and get business done. I could add, Anderson, that the president has said because he is now reelected, he's been telling his aides that this is an opportunity almost to experience his inauguration for the first time.
You see Al Franken there on the right?
Because in the original inauguration, he was so focused on the financial crisis, the economic crisis. There was a national security threat on the day of the inauguration. They were consumed by the crises of the moment. They almost couldn't concentrate on what was happening that day.
You know, 20 years ago when Bill Clinton was leaving right at this moment, his speechwriters were still with him. Taylor Branch got in the limousine with him and was rewriting the speech on the way over to the White House.
Wow.
and didn't even have a place to sit and had to kneel in the back behind the president.
There's Elizabeth Warren.
How many of these senators, as they walk out, are taking a look at that podium and saying,
Sizing it up?
Or the vice president. There's Jill Biden. There's Dr. Jill Biden.
The vice president's probably taking a look at that podium going,
yeah.
Now, last time, President Obama and Mrs. Obama had coffee with President and Mrs. Bush instead of with congressional leaders.
There's our only black senator we just mentioned.
Senator Tim Scott, first African-American Republican senator since Reconstruction.
Former President Bush is not, and Laura Bush are not going to be here today, nor is Bush 41, of course.
Just to follow up on what Jessica was saying about the president asking the White House staff, saying kind of enjoy this. Of course, second terms are always full of unintended things that occur, just the way first terms were. And so they all understand that. The one White House aide was quoted in the New York Times the other day as calling them locusts, these things that tend to descend on the White House, and you don't anticipate it. But of course now he doesn't have the economic crisis that he had.
Although we have seen that with just about every president who gets a second term, something unexpected. With Reagan, it was Iran-Contra. Here we have the First Lady, Michelle Obama, again wearing that. Is she wearing the same coat as before?
Looks to me like she has changed.
Yeah, it looks like she has changed. Previously, she was wearing a Tom Brown coat and Tom Brown dress with, I think, belt and shoes by J. Crew. But we'll try to find out.
As you watch the procession, we're watching obviously the principals here. Right, one of the huge challenges in a second term is trying to avoid burnout. The senior staff that does stay is exhausted. You also have a lot of turnover. You see the president, and it's, I think, the trademark, whether it's Chuck Hagel, somebody he likes, controversial to some Republicans, John Kerry at the State Department, maybe not his first choice, but somebody he likes and respects, his new chief of staff, Dennis McDonough, we expect to be someone the president. So his comfort zone. You see it when you're bringing in a new team. The question is it an A team? His Treasury Secretary is his former White House Chief of Staff. Is it an A team, especially when you're trying to get things done early on? Is there a burnout? It's a huge challenge for any second-term president to try to make sure that, those, especially you rattle everyone who did decide to stay and say, are you sure you got the energy?
His new team is a lot of musical chairs. It's not all new. It's a lot of the same team, just in new jobs. So if there's burnout, they would be feeling it. The Vice President. Anderson, you were mentioning the First Lady, and we've talked a lot about what she's wearing. One thing I would add is that we're reporting that she will take on some new role in the next term, and that is a little bit more of a political role, that she will be promoting some of the president's political agenda a bit more than we saw in the first term.
That's interesting.
That she, I would be interested to see how she'll do it, that I imagine it will be very delicate, just a bit of a nod in that direction. But through this political arm, the OFA organization, she will be promoting some of his initiatives in the grassroots movement.
And let me tell you,
Senator Tom Daschle there coming in.
She's a lot more popular in certain parts of the country than he is. I mean, and in polling, I was always amazed at how she would run 8 or 9 points more popular than the president in places where he wasn't necessarily so popular. She was a force.
And what a critical role she played during the convention, really giving a speech that really roused the entire audience. Here's the president, of course. Senator Charles Schumer.
And I can tell you, this is no surprise, but the speech is done, locked, and loaded. No more changes.
Unlike Bill Clinton.
Until it's not.
Right? The thing about the First Lady is that once she gets more involved in the political agenda, she will probably have to sacrifice a little bit of her popularity.
That's true.
And I think that's one reason she didn't do that this time around. She was so important to him in this re-election.
And from an image standpoint, also, one of the things that we pick up on in focus groups is that image of them two together, that loving family. Women voters ate that up. I mean, it was that was part of their brand, and they really appreciated it. And this was a guy who was truly in love with his wife, and his wife was a partner, and women voters really appreciated it.
Men didn't like that?
we didn't hear them talk about it as much.
Is that why he kissed her at that basketball game? I'm sure that was designed. That was poll tested and focus group approved. I'm sure of it.
Remember, in 2008, she was a little bit controversial during that campaign, and that's why she receded a little bit.
And the second term is where it's safe for her to step up. Remember, Laura Bush also stepped up in the second term for the women of Afghanistan in Burma, taking a stand about democracy in Burma.
As we watch the vice president come out, we didn't mention who was with him. I wonder if we'll get to mention him more. Senator Lamar Alexander of Tennessee, a former governor, a Republican, ran for president himself once, one of the members of the Senate who was incredibly frustrated by the inaction, the inability to get things done. Mark Warner is a Democrat, a former governor. There are a number of senators in both parties, especially the former governors who were chief executives who like to get things done, who have been talking privately among themselves about how can we get more things done? How can we find consensus?